Lopa is a cybersecurity competency leader at ENY. She comes close to 2 decades of experience and has spent the past few years helping organizations implement security transformation programs, designing effective organizations and operating models, and creating sustainable training and awareness to create a culture of being cyber secure. Make it a habit and not a hassle is her motto. So before I hand the stage over to Lopa, guys, any questions that you have, please ask in the chat box. I will pick it up at the end of the presentation and ask Lopa, and she'll be happy to answer it for you. With that, Lopa, over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for having me here today. I was listening to that address, and everything that was being said resonated with me, and what we go through and what we're trying to do to encourage women into cybersecurity. As Aditya said, I wasn't too impressed with his saying I've been around for 2 decades and working, but I think the important thing is that experience has allowed me to come to where I am today. And cybersecurity wasn't an option for me when I entered the workplace. It wasn't even something that I thought I could do. And I got into cybersecurity in the past, say, 7 to 10 years. And the reasons being is that as the world becomes more connected, the internet just blew up. People have got these things in their hands all the time. We are reliant on laptops and the internet and phones and Instagram and WhatsApp as our way of communication. The threats to our everyday life, our organizations, to the way that we operate increase. And as many of you know, elections, socioeconomic, COVID, all have had an absolute effect on the rise in the risk of threats to cybersecurity and also motivations for attack. I do have a slideshow, but I will use that a little bit as we go through. But I just want to sort of lay some why is diversity so important in cyber? So again, we said about diversity of thought. We also talk about why is culture and behavior so important in cybersecurity. Organizations always have an IT budget. They always have a cybersecurity budget. They always now have cyber insurance if something goes wrong. And you have all of these controls in place where your technology is tested regularly, the firewalls are tested regularly, the regulations that are there, whether it's GDPR, NIS, CFW in the US, so many are there to help protect the systems. However, who are the things interacting with the systems? It's us. We're the people. And you can spend millions upon millions of pounds upgrading your systems, but actually some of the easiest things you can do is change the culture within your organization to make everyone a bit more aware and a bit more responsible for their cybersecurity. So we did some research, EY did some research with the Financial Times. And it was really interesting what the results came back. We asked a number of questions, some around technology, but also some around people and some around the behaviours. And so one of the main questions we asked was, what are the biggest barriers to improving cybersecurity in the organisation? 23% that cybersecurity is not championed as part of their business culture. Cybersecurity should be as important as health and safety. If you know that you should be walking properly, not leaving knives out, making sure everything's taken away, you should also know that protecting your passwords, protecting your data, locking your computer are all equally part of keeping your organisation cyber secure. 46% that cybersecurity was not seen as a strategic priority. The reason for this is many organisations do not react to cybersecurity as a threat until it happens to them. It's always something that's just left in the side. It's never going to happen to us, or we'll just bury our heads in the sand and not think what's happening. And then it happens and they are unprepared. 49% of the organisations believed it's limited by their lack of know-how, so that their people and their organisations didn't understand what their role was. 53 said it was the lack of business sponsorship at the top levels. That's really high. Over half of the businesses that we spoke to and organisations we spoke to said that cybersecurity was not championed at the top of the organisation. So then we took it aside. What do you think the main factors on cybersecurity being an issue to you? 55% think that humans, us, are their biggest threat. Insider threat, for the longest time, was always thought about as a malicious act. So somebody is wanting to do something bad, somebody wants to release some data, somebody has some political motivation, somebody has some emotional motivation. What we're seeing now is that actually the majority of insider threat activity is down to lack of understanding. How many times has an event happened because somebody has downloaded the wrong link on their laptops and therefore infected a whole entire organization? How many times have people used their laptops for personal use and downloaded Facebook or answered that email that goes, oh, log into your account here and see how much money you can save? That happens all the time, and none of that is malicious. All of that is people trusting what's given to them on screen, or using their computers or their laptops or their phones or anything like that for their everyday life. But all of these increase threats. So for COVID, for example, depending which country you're from, but in the UK, when the test and trace was coming up, when people were asking to be locked down and stay at home, hackers here used that as a way of scaremongering and getting money from people. So they would start to get people's phone numbers, email addresses, and send multiple emails about, oh, okay, you're at risk, we can give you a free test, log into this email and send us the money and we will get you tested. They use the pandemic, they use people's emotional heightened states to, again, extort money out of people. Like none of this has anything to do with technology. Notice this is emails, this is text messages. All of that is stuff which is secure. Google Mail is secure, Hotmail is secure. The data that you get through it and the link that you then click on it, that's the issue. So how do you change things in that way? So some of the things that you can do in an organization is establishing everyone's roles. So by that and doing that, so I spend a lot of my time, as Aditya said, helping organizations understand where the weakest link is when it comes to cybersecurity. And some of that is as simple as just sending out questionnaires and understanding, okay, so do you know your role in keeping your organization cyber secure, sorry. A lot of them will say, yes, awesome, brilliant. Your answer is yes, what do you do? And then silence. Password, I change my password every 5 minutes. Okay, well, actually, that's making your organization less secure. So the new guidance is not to change your password as regularly as 30 days, because that causes more opportunity for people to come in and fish and say, your password reset is now due, because people have figured out that organizations every 30 to 60 days change their passwords. So they can do a deep fake of the email address, of anything like that, of the shell, of the way that you interact with your organization's internet and intranet, and go, right, send us all your details. So actually the guidance is already changing because the threats are changing and people are starting to get a little bit more au fait with what's going on. Simple things you can do is just tell people what their role is. You don't need to spend millions of pounds. You don't need to spend thousands on PowerPoint slides and things like that. Just tell people what their role is. And the other thing to understand is that whereas IT is your laptops and things like that, and that stays with you, cybersecurity has meant that everyone, including your family, is now included in your bubble of security. So education isn't just for those that are interacting on an organizational level. Education is for everybody. Anyone that has elderly parents or young kids, they're most at risk of accidentally logging onto something, getting very excited by clickbait. So this culture and behavior of understanding what that threat is to you isn't just now down to organizations. It permeates all part of your life. One of the issues, and this is where this is such an important part and why I'm so happy to be here, is that getting the right people into the organizations is a real problem at the moment. And untapped parts of society that aren't doing cybersecurity are women and neurodiversity. For all the reasons that were said in the keynote speech, there is a barrier. And some might say it's invisible. It's not invisible. We know what the barriers are to encouraging people into the industry. The industry for the longest time has been dominated by the military, by large organizations, where diversity of thought, diversity of people has been lacking due to regulation, due to many things. And we can debate that for hours, and I have with very many people. But that has meant in this growing industry that when you look up, when you look to the side, when you look down, there aren't people that look like you. And that's a barrier to coming into cybersecurity. Another barrier, again, speaking around the keynote speech, is there is a misconception that cybersecurity is just about coding. I'm here to tell you that it's not. I did actually start my career as a coder, but I now do nothing to do that. I help organizations understand what their cybersecurity strategy is, where they should be spending their money, how they should be hiring their people, what trainings should they do. All of these things, none of which have required me to understand how to code a pen test, but is equally as important as a career path. So when you see that 70% of organizations that were questioned said they struggle to find the right cybersecurity skills, maybe they're not looking in the right places. The industry also has an issue of, if I'm hiring somebody, I'm going to expect that someone else has invested the time to educate them, to train them, to give the qualifications, of which many are incredibly valid. As we are growing at an exponential rate in this industry, we can no longer rely on the person before us training up the people coming into our talent line. And also, we can't rely on you to spend all of your money to do the same, because some of these things are really expensive. So as organizations are getting together, we are trying to understand how we can bring different types of people into the organizations, and how do we train them up into the right skills. And I think the quote is about, we don't know what the cybersecurity skills are going to be in 10 years' time, 5 years' time, or even 5 months' time. The pandemic has shown us that what we thought we knew all just went out the window. The threats that we were kind of tracking all changed. The types of people that we need to keep our organizations and ourselves secure all changed overnight. Resilience became a much bigger part of cybersecurity. Again, you don't need to know the technical side, but can you take an organization through what it feels like to go through a pandemic, an event, sorry? Can you help organize, prepare their processes, their systems, their people if something happens? Another route into cybersecurity. So that's 70%. When we ask the question next time, I'm fully expecting to go down, because I'm expecting that the organizations are thinking slightly differently about how they're bringing people in, how they're encouraging people in, and how they're training them. Only 13% of organizations thought that training was important to keep organizations cyber secure. That should be 100. Every single person that walks through the door should know what their responsibilities are when it comes to data, when it comes to passwords, and access, physical access. Just making sure you have your badge on you at all times, that no one else can get there. So when you see these numbers, they're quite stark. The simplest thing that you can fix is often the hardest thing to do, because nobody wants to deal with people. Nobody wants to actually look at, oh, okay, I need to talk to somebody to fix something. I know, I'd rather just send an email, or I'd rather just pay someone to fix my firewalls and deal with it. Simple fixes. But by not thinking in that simplicity, again, that's another barrier to expanding the opportunities for employment within cybersecurity. I notice none of these things are gender specific. None of these things are gender specific about education, about strategy, around program transformation, around regulatory control, around data loss prevention. None of it is. So why do we still struggle to encourage women into the field? We're changing, and we have to change. And I'm very happy that I'm some of that wave, that as a female leader and as a female Indian leader in this space, there's not very many of us. We have not an issue in diversity in cybersecurity. Diversity of ethnic background is incredibly good. But when it comes to those leadership, strategic thinking positions, it starts to go through the floor. People are still thinking very old ways about what it means to be cyber secure. And the fact there are so many of you here really is good that we are thinking differently. So on to the next slide. So one thing I keep on saying is making it a habit and not a hassle. Culture isn't just about changing your passwords. Culture is about people, about changing the way that you work, changing the way that you think, and also empowering everyone to have a decision on how they work within cybersecurity for your organisation or at home. And there's really simple things you can do. Again, start at the top. Previous slide, I said, not many boards think of this as an issue that they need to think about. Over the past 6 months, they now think of it as an issue. And who are they coming to ask the questions? More people like me with my skill set. Because I can go into a board situation and not talk in terms of megabits and bytes and pen testing and things like that. I can make the situation real to them. And it's not just me. We have a team of across the globe, I think nearly about 8,000 people in cybersecurity in EY. So there's so many of us, but not enough of us. We are still growing. But it has to come from the top. Your leaders and you all need to say, we have to invest in this. You have to integrate your people into your cybersecurity programs in any which way you can, whether it's from the beginning, whether it's in the middle, whether it's at the end, whether it's in aftercare. You must make sure that people are your cornerstone, that they understand what's going on. Transform your performance and reward structures. Now, this is something that, again, is a barrier for women coming into cybersecurity. Cybersecurity actually is probably the easiest thing to provide flexible working arrangements, flexible pay arrangements, and flexible leave arrangements because of the nature of the work. Cybersecurity isn't a 9-to-5 job. IT might be, but cyber is not. So what a wonderful way to encourage people that have different restrictions or different desires in their working life than into cybersecurity. You don't need to necessarily give everybody a full-year salary. If all people want to do is maybe, some people might want to sit in their hoodies in their basement coding, but why can't they do that between the hours of 12 and 4 in the morning? There is no reason why they can't. Cybersecurity is a 24-hour issue. So working with organizations to transform how they hire in and retain talent is something very, very simple. It really means breaking the brain of this traditional way of 5 or 6 days a week working, 9 to 5, shift working. Give flexible working arrangements. Think differently. And suddenly your world opens up. People who have caring arrangements, whether it's for children or parents or family members, people that are studying on the side, people that have dog care arrangements, anything that you have, there is no reason why you still can't have a career here. But that challenge isn't for you who's listening to me. That challenge is for people like me who are making the rules on hiring. How do we change all of that? Also, cybersecurity is a hot topic and a hot recruitment topic. And the amount of money you can earn is exponential across depending on how many organizations you want to go to. But what we are finding is that cybersecurity professionals aren't always driven by money. So actually the highest earner or the highest paying organization doesn't always get the best talent. It is what else is in that package. Flexible working, as I mentioned before, training, learning, accreditations. These are things that tend to motivate people in this industry. So again, not a barrier. So why are we still struggling? Organizations are old and we have to break not just the cultures within the organization, but those at the top to think very differently about encouraging people in. Doing sponsorships with universities and schools, all of these things, but also not just concentrating on the young. We have many people in our workforce that are my age, older than me, maybe a little bit younger than me, who might not have access to all the same opportunities as people coming through school. So again, organizations need to think about how do we tap into that, those people who are in the middle of their career, and think about their skills and bring them into cybersecurity. And that's what I spend a lot of my time doing. And then the fourth and most important point is building for the future. What your threat and your issue today is never going to be the same as tomorrow. People who are working in cyber, people who are motivated to do cyber attacks, their motivations change every day. And you look at China and Russia and places like that, North Korea, they have factories of people who are in there just finding ways to hack into infrastructure. Political changes are a huge driver into what motivates not just individuals but countries to do things. And it changes all the time. This year has shown us that we are not in control. Mother Nature decides to do something and we are there. So how do we respond? So having that strategic type of thinking, having that forward thinking is really important. And there are some skills that women have that perhaps men don't have. And that strategic thinking is one that often comes up. Multitasking doesn't exist. So many people say that, oh, women are better at multitasking. It is not a thing that people do. I think people do many things well, but you can't multitask. But organization, critical thinking, questioning, all of these things are really important things for building for the future. Because you're always thinking about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Cyber today has already happened. We don't care. What are we doing about in the future? So how do we make it a habit, not a hassle? You need to keep it simple. This is, again, another barrier into cybersecurity for people, women, not just women, actually, for everybody, diversity, women, is that there is a misconception that cybersecurity is super complicated and it's really hard and it only allows people in hoodies to decipher it. Not the case. If you keep it simple, if you make sure that everyone understands what their role is, if you explain it in simple language, it's easy to do. I remember the very first time that I started working in cybersecurity. It was in a client in America. And this was about 7, 8 years ago. And I sat in the room and they all started talking in 3-letter acronyms. I was just sat there like this. I had no idea what was going on. And at the end of this half-an-hour meeting, of which maybe only 5 people understood what was going on, they looked at me and went, "You've got it?" I went, "Nope." "Why? It was so easy." I said, "For half an hour, not a single one of you said a word or an acronym that was more than 3 letters. How are you expecting your organization of 10,000 people to understand what the issue is if you talk in code?" And for many of them, it was that light bulb moment of, oh, that's why we're failing. That's why we continue to have breaches. That's why we continue to have issues. It's because for us, we love it and it's great and we understand what's going on, but no one else understands us. So you've got to keep it simple. In recruitment, keep it simple. In job opportunities, keep it simple. It does not have to be complicated. And that encourages people to come through and it increases our diversity in the field. Make it fun. IT is not fun for a lot of people. Cyber, they hear it and they think, oh, that's a bit dull. It doesn't need to be. Cyber is one of the most interesting topics going at the moment. Hence, I'm in it now. And I'm enjoying my work every day because I get to talk to new people, get to look at different problems, get to solve for different problems every day. So making it fun, less scary, is a huge important part of making it a habit, not a hassle. And positive reinforcement. You know, how many times has your parents or your kids berated you for doing something wrong? And then you're too scared to try again. What you did wrong today in cybersecurity might be right tomorrow. History has taught us that. What might be vanguard today is everything tomorrow. So keep rewarding people for good behaviours and don't chastise them for bad, because it stifles thought. So when we stifle thought, we stifle diversity, and we come back to the thing of we're not encouraging diversity within the cybersecurity area. It seems really simple, doesn't it? Just talk plainly, understand your goals. Organisation have to take responsibility for encouraging all types of people, and we'll get there. So I'm hoping we had some questions through, because that's the end of my talk.
Hi, Lopa.
Hi.
Okay, that was a very, I would say, insightful and informative talk about some of the basic things. So basically, you simplified it and said cybersecurity is not just technical ones and zeros from your LinkedIn profile. It's more about making it very easy to understand for everyone in order to get a much more effective approach to cyber in your organization and within your home as well. So I'm going to open up the stage to any questions. Okay, and you made a couple more interesting points. You're talking about how fast cybersecurity was evolving, because the recommended course of action was every 30 to 60 days, please change your passwords, because again, in case your password is part of a breach, within 30 days, it's no longer. Now you have more threats like that, similar to that. Let's talk about deepfakes. Now deepfakes are becoming a very real issue. How do you go about educating not just within an organization, but people within your home as well, on spotting and recognizing something for a deepfake?
Yeah, and I'll give live examples of my mother. She's in her 70s,
Okay.
and as many mothers, especially, I don't know how many Indians are on, but for whatever reason, India loves WhatsApp. So my mother's
Yes.
on it constantly. And the amount of fake and false information that is sent through those WhatsApp groups to my issues, to everybody, is immense. So educating my own mother on deep fakes and risks of cybersecurity is a daily occurrence for me. Because usually it comes to me as well. It's like, stop sending the information. If it doesn't look right, it's not right. But when I get the panicked phone calls of, she gets the, again, because people know if someone's vulnerable, if they're of an age where they don't quite understand what's going on. So I've now trained her. If someone calls her and goes, oh, can you please say your name for verification, that she has to hang up the phone. And it's not unusual, is it? That sometimes people would go, oh, your bank is calling you, can you please tell me your name and your address for verifying purposes? Now those are ways that people are getting the deep fake information. People are getting smarter to understanding what to do. And unfortunately, there's no way to stop it, because you're not always going to have someone like me on the end of the phone, or a mother who's starting to understand that these are bad things. So I think in terms of education is that a lot of banks are going to voice recognition or something like that. And I think one of the safest ways to keep yourself secure is two-factor authentication. So if someone gets your voice or someone gets your thumbprint, they haven't got your second thing. So for everything that you have, always make sure you have two-factor authentication.
Okay, thank you for that. We have another question from the audience. May I please ask, what are the soft skills basically looked at while you recruit cyber professionals?
Yeah, so I'm going to say I don't like the term soft skills, because all skills are important. And I think that's another thing that we often say, and people think, well, if I go into cyber, I'm the softer side of cyber because I deal with people or programs. Both of those are absolutely integral to cybersecurity maturity in any part of your life. So I would say those things are equally as hard skills as maybe pen testing or coding. So some things that we look for is strategic and critical thinking. So can you think differently, or are you very process-led? For some parts of cybersecurity, process-led thinking is incredibly important because it's repetitive. However, if you're thinking from a strategy point of view, or you're thinking about an organizational point of view, you need that critical thinking. You need to be able to ask questions and see patterns and challenge. I think also leadership as well is another one that I look for, and encouraging those around you. So again, by nature of the business and how it's grown, we tend to have a lot of lone players who like to work by themselves, working on problems. However, as an industry, if everyone works by themselves, we're never going to grow because we're not going to have that skill set. So I think leadership, encouragement is something that I also look at. Are you going to bring people along with you as you go forward? And I think the third thing is just good organisation. I know it sounds really simple, but if you can organise a project, if you can organise someone's thoughts, if you can organise yourself, that's something we look for as well.
Okay, great. That makes a very valid point. Organizing and putting ideas very clearly to someone else is very important. So next, let me ask you one last question before we close the session. What are some of the most common regular cybersecurity issues that you've seen when you've dealt with your clients, or even within, let's say, individuals within their homes, within their families?
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a two-part question. One, what are some of the most common cybersecurity mistakes a lot of organizations make? And what are some of the most common cybersecurity issues that people make within their own homes and within their own families?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the most common mistakes that organizations make, quite frankly, is they think a phishing exercise is everything that they need to do to keep their organization secure. And
Okay.
the reason why I choose that is because you can spend lots of money on a phishing exercise and your maturity goes no better. So I would say the most common mistake that organizations make is people. They don't invest in their people, and educate their people, boards all the way down to the shop floor on what they need to do. You cannot rely on technology to keep your organization secure. And the second part of your question is what people do at home. Is that right?
Yeah, the most common mistake people make at home.
Forwarding on information, actually. If something doesn't look right and then you start to bifurcate it everywhere, that's a real problem. Believing what you read immediately is an issue. And that comes to, oh, my bank's just emailed me. All right, I'll click on the link. Oh, someone's just called me and asked for information. I'll just trust it. Have a little bit of distrust when you see these things. And having the trust that the organization, whether it's WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram, they're hackable. You know, people can get your information. So another common mistake is sharing too much of yourself online. That's how people get you. Yes, you want to share with your friends and family, but there's ways that you can do that. Have private groups, have closed friend groups. Don't be public in everything that you do, because that's what makes you a target. Because also, if somebody knows that you work for a target firm or a target organization, they'll go through your personal data first before they go to the organization, because that's how they know they're going to get it.
Okay. So thank you so much for that, Lopa. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, so I think we're done with the questions. Thank you so much once again, Lopa, for that very informative and I would say easy to understand session of what exactly we and organizations need to do to improve our cybersecurity awareness and our improvement of people for the cybersecurity approach. Thank you so much, Lopa. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. Good luck for the rest of the conference.
Thank you.